Hey there, I've talked about many Half-Life mods on my channel, mods made by an ever-active community that are still releasing mods to expand the story to this day, even though they're using an engine originally made in 1998 or 2004. Going back to 2007 though, there's one mod that a ton of people still talk about, a mod called Paranoia. Paranoia moves completely outside
Never
of
heard
the
of it.
Half-Life universe
Whoa.
to instead tell its own story set in Russia, and pushes the now 27-year-old Gold Source engine to its limits in the process. I'll be summarizing, analyzing and reviewing this mod and its very controversial sequel that released in 2015. Subscribe! Thank you! So first off, what is Paranoia? Outside of the human emotion of Paranoia, Paranoia the Half-Life 1 mod is an action horror game released in 2007. You play as Major Alexander Kalashnikov, a Spetsnaz
Alexander
Kalashnikov in a
Kalashnikov.
school-turned-military training camp in, you guessed it, Russia. And damn does it capture the aesthetic well. This mod's intro also serves as its very direct tutorial. The most direct comparison would be to imagine a merge of the beginning of Half-Life 1 and the training course of Opposing Force. You can interact with every single NPC and each of them will have a fitting response. Note, a Russian response.
Здравия разрешите доложить. Я с оружейных комнат глаз не спускаю.
Given that this mod is set in Russia, get used to reading subtitles, which this mod somehow is able to provide even though this is Gold Source, an engine that never featured a subtitle system. On a similar note, this mod includes HUD elements not before seen in Gold Source, like being able to read books laying around and actually scrolling in them, which is used to provide some cool background lore.
I always wished games did this more often. Well, not so more often, more so summarize it, I guess. Then again, Resident Evil, I don't know what I'm saying. I think I wish Half-Life in general had this feature of like allowing you to read stuff. Like, for example, you have the folder with the Half-Life 2 Hazardous Environment Suit Mark V, and you have, like, kind of read out the first half, but afterwards the rest of the text is just lines, if I remember correctly. I do wish we had more of, like, you can actually read the whole thing.
Another new HUD element is a menu that lets you view what you're currently supposed to do. A mission briefing of sorts. This will prove very useful because most times you receive instructions in a dialogue and only hear it one time. Moving around the barracks, you'll find everything you expect from a military base. From people singing songs to each other to tired soldiers to very tired soldiers. You can even read some diaries of those suffering from their times in war zones. In the most tedious part of this segment, you get sent back and forth from point to point. The mission briefing you can open helps with this, but running around until you see a door that randomly opened isn't super fun. That being said, the environments do help. I feel like I'm able to smell most of these rooms. Smacking real-life photos into late 90s video game graphics has never looked as satisfying as it does here. I mean, look at these blokes. Peak character design. The game introduces you to some brand new mechanics here. You got a gas mask, a helmet that protects you from headshots, which is absolutely crucial in combat, and a new healing system, where you get to stash painkillers to use in the middle of combat. There's an armor system similar to that of usual Half-Life, and there are a bunch of new weapons, some of which we'll only get introduced to later down the line. In the shooting range we get to play with the AK-74, Stechkin APS and the OTS Glover, all of which feature either scopes or iron sights. Iron sights in this case meaning that you simply zoom in a bit. There eventually comes an alarm and we get called to the HQ, which is where the tutorial ends. This tutorial section was done perfectly. There is however one issue that you will most likely encounter, which is that you can't change the volume of music. And as is the case with games always, the volume is always set to 100% by default, meaning you will helplessly go deaf while the same song is played on a loop for a solid 15 minutes. Now don't get me wrong, the music in this mod is insanely great, and I've been using it as the background music for most of this video. But it can get a bit much in a case like this. Now thankfully there is a fix, which is that you have to head into the multiplayer options, advanced, and then change the MP3 volume there. I have no idea why this works like this. At the HQ we get told about a hostage situation at an industrial site, and so we drive there. Not sure if this is maybe just me, but I absolutely adore scenes like this where you actually sit in the back of a vehicle and actually go somewhere. This scene is obviously just stationary, but it's a thought that counts. It's a cozy vibe. The scene we arrive at has its own unique aesthetic.
It's a nice transition.
One that many may equate to the Stalker games. The light outside is incredibly unique and once more, I feel like I can smell the air here. The gameplay is actually insanely fun. During this entire assault on the building we receive multiple new weapons, including a PKM and an ASVAL, which we receive in this cool section where we have to snipe off individual terrorists from a vantage point. Another highlight of the section being the music. There were multiple tracks played by a band called Slot, and it makes for some banger combat sections. We find out
That's
from one
some
of the
banger
hostages that the
tunes.
terrorists were chatting with someone in English, and that they're heading to a gate to an underground bunker. And so we head there too. These outside areas feel like they're ripped straight out of a creepypasta about a game bought at a garage sale that was supposedly haunted. Because, as you may remember, this mod is known for being a horror action mod, and yet there has been no horror thus far. This creeping thought that horror will be introduced at some point builds a lot of tension. This is similar to another popular horror mod
Not
called
really.
Underhell, a mod I managed to squish into just about every video I make because it's my absolute favorite mod of all time. That mod starts with you as a SWAT unit going through training and then taking care of a hostage situation, only after which the scary stuff starts taking place in a total tone shift. Paranoia is more gradual with how it introduces horror elements. That being said, this wasn't the last Underhell parallel. One of the first introductions of horror is done right here in this outside area, where you see this entrance to a bunker. Going down, you will find nothing but absolute darkness. Occasional noises and the pure thought of knowing that this game is known for its horror elements will build up so much tension that you'll be glad once you leave again. Because that is all there is to it. The tension. Nothing is really down there, at least nothing that I found. There's a lot more combat elements, and also the one and only section
I
where you
guess.
to use the gas mask. This is sadly a common trope
Oh,
with
it's
Half-Life
just
mods.
one
They introduce
segment.
new elements only to use them a singular time. Same can be said for Opposing Force and its ropes actually. They're introduced and then completely forgotten, only being used once or twice throughout up until the very end where they're shoehorned in instead of a ladder. Would have been nice if there were some more creative uses of them in the game, as Half-Life is usually known for introducing an element and then expanding upon it. I still love Opposing Force overall though, this is major nitpicking, so don't come attacking me my fellow Opposing Force lovers, thank you. But yeah, same can be said for the gas mask and Paranoia. Would have been great if they actually got some more use outside of this singular time. During these combat sections, you may start to question what the terrorists are aiming to achieve by breaking into some underground bunker. Well, we are about to find out. We clear out the bunkers, but right before we head out, someone reports a bunch of mines being placed, which promptly explode and a cave-in happens. We are now stuck in an even
Great.
deeper underground bunker. A secret underground bunker as will turn out.
Yeah,
And it is
goodie.
here that the best scene of this mod will play out. And this scene is perhaps one of the best I've seen in media in a long time as a whole. The base contacts you and explains the situation, which is that this place is the Crot 1 laboratory. It got exposed to biological contamination almost 26 years ago and was shut down. After the cave-in that just happened, a science team was sent to prevent a new incident. But the base lost contact to that team. Now the terrorists are down here alongside us, our goal being to find the scientists and to protect them from the terrorists. The incredible scene begins now, which is that you hear somebody else of your unit communicating with the base and explaining what he's seeing. And while you yourself don't see or hear anything suspicious, you do hear the person on the other side of the radio slowly getting more distressed. He first describes that the lights are still working in the lab, but that the place is scary. He then mentions the lab being filled with blood and that he's hearing footsteps. He then sees people, commanding them to stop or he'll shoot, but they won't. The last we hear is screaming, which happens right before we ourselves step into the lab. We now trace the footsteps of exactly where the guy we just heard went. So it's basically one round of tension built up to be slam dunked by you entering that exact place as well, adding even more tension as you know something is about to face you. Sneaking through these labs, you'll hear shots getting louder and louder. Eventually you come to find what the guy was talking about. It's just regular zombies. Now the reveal itself is kinda now in hindsight, but I can only imagine how insanely scary this must have been as a child.
I mean,
And to
they
this
look
one's
good.
credit, actually delivering on tension is always insanely hard. It's a situation where once you reveal your monster, it's over, as with most horror media. And the monsters here are actually really cool, with some great looking models that reuse Half-Life 2 zombie animations. Now the only correct next step would be to immediately
Great
start to build
combat.
the next moment of tension. Question being if the mod manages to do that. We first come across more people of our own, and find the scientists sent down here to prevent another incident, which they are planning to do using clones. We have a scientist called Pauline explain to us that the goal of the secret research lab has always been to clone the perfect soldier, and that the clones we're seeing here will eventually replace every single Spetsnaz. This is promptly taken away from her though, as somebody takes control over the clones and they start attacking us and other Spetsnaz. To again
Great.
draw parallels between other mods here, this mod remains very similar to Underhell. Underhell had the protagonist put into a secret underground prison that then got swamped with zombies mixed with some action elements including fighting alongside armed guards. Another mod is similar to Escape Life, a mod which story is pretty confusing, but it involves action elements where you fight against clones, and in large parts also plays in secret underground labs. And to make it clear, both of these mods released after Paranoia. Getting back to the game now, we're tasked with in large parts also plays in secret underground labs. And to make it clear, both of these mods released after Paranoia. Getting back to the game though, we're tasked with finding a source that is blocking transmissions or something. Following the story proved a bit hard with all the names of different locations thrown around, though I don't assume many people come for the story anyways when we've got great visuals like these, with every room you enter featuring a new contorted zombie variant, just so horrifyingly great to look at. Though unfortunately enough for most of them, these are the only times they'll be used. We eventually find the source, which by skimming over the 6,000 word text laying right next to this dead body turned zombie breeding facility, we find out that this is the dad of the scientist we met earlier, Pauline. This reveal was actually somewhat cool to see. We then leave the facility, during which foreign sabotage units try and kill us, which felt rather shoehorned in considering we are about 5 minutes away from the ending and we never get a resolution to these guys. We shoot down a helicopter and the game ends. Yeah, it's that quick. We see one last cutscene before the credits that is showing the layers below the ground, which was honestly quite well made. The ending shows zombies approaching Pauline. Quite the cliffhanger ending. One of, if not the only complaint that people have about Paranoia is its length, and I couldn't agree more. This mod set up such a great premise, so many cool enemies and so many different factions. This mod could have quite easily fit double the playtime and not have it get tiring. Have the player stuck in the facility even longer, tease the source even longer, and have it be the grand reveal. Perhaps even add a boss fight element to it. Explore the foreign sabotage units even further.
I agree with the
Perhaps
boss
give them
element.
an actual background. I do myself have a few more nitpicks to the game though.
That is crazy
The enemy's
design.
health was insanely high to a point where only headshots were viable to deal damage. It felt like most of your weapons were airsoft guns, and using anything other than the PKM made little sense. Another issue being the relentless use of text to tell stories in the game. Now to the game's credit, it does.
Yeah, that is one thing I hope, give me text, but don't swarm me with things that explain the story. Have the story explained, by itself with dialogue, but still give me something that I can, expand the world, essentially.
Does also explain stuff to you more directly by speaking with characters and similar. And I think small amounts of text on the side, like the diaries at the start, were fine enough. Though in the lab sections there were these huge blocks of text that I can't imagine anyone really reading. And the reveal that the source is the dad of Pauline is hidden away in the middle of this note. There was also an issue of close to no autosaving. You have to bind quicksave to something accessible if you don't want to lose huge amounts of process, pretty much in every room. Overall though, I can only recommend playing Half-Life Paranoia. My personal tip would be to play it on easy just to make it a bit more enjoyable. You will feel disappointed once it ends because it truly is a shame how short it is. But the short experience you do get is well worth it. Paranoia 2 though, oh boy. The game starts off with dialogue about people wondering about your condition. You then awake in a hospital. The hospital is abandoned. Your door was blocked off from the outside using a bench, seemingly to protect you. You may notice that the graphics here look really good for Half-Life 1, which is because this isn't Half-Life 1. This is using the Sash 3D engine, an engine made to run Gold Source games and to expand the engine limitations. It's mostly used to port existing Gold Source content, even allowing you to use them for Android devices, but making the game based on Sash works too. And this is what they did here. The game then throws us into a flashback. This is seemingly shortly after the events of the first game. We are again tasked with storming a facility because... yeah. The fellow soldiers actually look pretty cool, their running animation being a mix of cool and goofy. It is to note that this game uses a ton of assets from other games.
I mean, that's how you run with armor.
Permissions is...
especially if you're heavily armored.
Things are from sounds and texture libraries, but a lot of models, textures, songs and animations are taken from somewhere else. Assuming the best though, and that they got the permission for all of it, I think the mix is rather nice, and the concept of a deep underground facility is done well. We quickly meet the first zombies, and the weapons we get from the start feel a lot nicer to use. The dark corridors only lit up by the flashlights of you and your team as hordes of zombies come towards you is super fun. The zombies got a more generic look this time around. Yeah. More like the ones from, say, Left 4 Dead instead of the scary cry of fear-like flesh monsters we were fighting in the first part.
Which looked
actually
awesome.
A big downgrade. We eventually return to the Crowd 1 lab, which is really cool to see. Oh, also the zombies have weapons now. These may be clones, I don't know to be honest. After meeting a hazmat suit scientist, we are now tasked with stealing documents relating to this facility from an archive. And it is here that this all fell apart for me. Do you remember when Kane Pixels dropped his Backrooms series in 2021? The videos that looked so good that they may as well actually be real? Not that the Backrooms were ever dead, but it caused a revival of the scene that is still felt to this day. Think of the Backrooms what you will, but one thing we can all agree on is that any trend is made worse by people attempting to capitalize on it. By which I'm not referring to Kane Pixels, I love his stuff. I'm referring to the era of Backrooms slop games on Steam. By just searching for Backrooms on Steam, you will find at least 100 games, out of which...
the one thing being repeated several thousand times. Yeah, let's not look at stuff that are for free or other stuff like that. Just herd the sheep. Maybe you'll earn some money out of it.
More than half cost money, and it's all just the same thing. Backrooms, solve quests, escape, or don't. Now there are obviously some gems in there, some games that are better than others, but to anyone who has played more than a few of them, you will know what I mean when I say that they all have that same vibe, with which I'm not referring to the backrooms themselves.
Again, what do you
Have
expect?
a certain feel. My best attempt of describing it is that it doesn't feel like you're playing a game that is in harmony with itself. It's very obvious that nothing you're seeing was actually made for the game. Character animations are not fitting to their actual speed. Assets are clashing. The puzzles never go beyond simple collection tasks, and the overall look and vibe is just the same.
I mean,
Now,
yeah, what do you
obviously,
expect?
nobody's looking for a reinvention of the wheel when they're playing Backrooms game number 35. But when you make a game, you should always at least try to put some personality in it. No matter if your game is made out of free Unity assets or not. And unfortunately, a personality is exactly what most Backrooms games are missing. I wouldn't even blame you for not noticing that the footage switched between a total of 10 different games in the last 30 seconds. From this point forward, the only vibe I got from this game was unimaginative backroom slop. It started with the task of collecting all the documents. The unlisted livestream is my witness that I spent 20 minutes looking for those documents in one room. There were no hints, no lights guiding you, just unsaturated papers on top of unsaturated textures. With the task of finding a total of like 7 or 8 documents across the unlit room. This was so shit. It was then that I started to notice that none of this really had any polish to it. Shortly after this we have a small boss fight, which in and of itself is fine. But after it, the room gets rushed by shitty hit-scan zombies that will kill you in 2 or 3 hits with their weapon. And best of all, no autosaves after the boss fight. I want to die.
Great.
So you're just gonna have to do it again. The already frustrating combat is made worse by the AI companions. Like this smart gentleman who managed to mock the loser zombie by tanking shots and doing nothing but looking at me instead of firing back. Or a minute later where he'd rather just stand there and get bounced back and forth instead of firing at the zombies. I then saw this weird cutscene reel of a scientist now being a zombie, then died somehow 2 minutes later to then be placed before the cutscene again. The game was dead to me at that point. I quit this mod a short amount of time later when I saw spiders being introduced as enemies. Okay, no, that's the end of this. And you guys know I can't handle spiders, but I had to go back and finish it. And I regret it.
Arachnophobia, really?
Cheats and I modded the spiders out. I'm not kidding about my arachnophobia, I swear. Even with the cheats enabled and the spider enemy being completely removed, the mod somehow managed to be hard as hell. I had literal God mode, which was how I discovered the mechanic that zombies can punch your weapon out of your hands. Not with a certain chance or anything, no. Every time they hit you, you will lose your weapon, which is especially...
That is just frustrating. I remember I watched the Half-Life, not a Half-Life, Left 4 Dead 2 mod that has the exact same mechanic. Why? We don't need this shit. It's pointless. By all accounts, pointless. You don't need to have a mechanic that just shoves away your guns. At least if you're gonna do that, have me have a secondary that I can still rely on, or at the very least it happens rarely, not so often, or in every single instance when you get hit. So it's not fun. I mean, it's cool at first, but you're gonna introduce more enemies, different types of, guns and stuff like that, and it's gonna become super frustrating to have all your guns just suddenly smacked out of your hands. So what? I'm gonna be left with melee, and then what? They're gonna smack the melee away? Stupid.
Actually made worse by the fact that switching weapons takes like 5 seconds.
That's even worse.
3 seconds where you don't even see anything you're holding. Zombies have the perfect chance to knock your weapon out of your hand here without you noticing. Because there's no sound cue or text on screen to notify you. And given that most maps are pitch black for at least half of the duration, it's insanely easy to lose a weapon without realizing. Especially if you aren't aware of the feature, just as I was until about half the game was done. Otherwise, I basically finished this mod with the same weapons I started with. Which is very weird considering that when I tried cheating all weapons, it turns out there are 5 more weapons I didn't even come by. So I must have missed them somehow. And I wonder how that happened given I checked every corridor 20 times involuntarily because I never had any idea where to go due to the developers thinking it would be a good idea to just not include any lights outside of your flashlight and to never guide you anywhere. The mazy nature is part of the underground complex setting, which is why it's important to guide the player correctly. This game serves as an example of how not to do it, which screams of a lacking amount of playtesting, which you'll notice either by the fact that you barely find any supplies, the fact you never have an idea where to go, or by the fact that the game doesn't autosave ever and thus has you doing the same painstaking part over and over again.
To cut down the frame and
the damage that I never found the way around. There was gas in certain rooms where you have no idea where it starts and where it ends, which is insanely crucial because you find like one painkiller per month in this game. And even worse, it adds this distortion effect that lasts for 30 seconds, no matter how long you spend in the gassed area, and no matter if you put on your gas mask or not. One of the cooler parts of this game was Pauline returning, at least for a very short moment. I think the reveal of her was somewhat cool given that it extended upon the post-credit scene of the last game, but the scene was merely a little bump of happiness in what was an absolute torture of a video game experience. One of the first things we have to do after meeting her is go down the staircase, with an AI that makes Rosenberg's pathfinding accuracy seem like heat-seeking missiles. After this, I lost her and wasn't able to find her. Until I did, she was lying dead between some zombie corpses, which for some reason did not load the last save game automatically. And as if all of that wasn't enough yet, the last autosave before this was right before the staircase. A segment that at this point was about 15 minutes ago. I hope you guys see why I'm so frustrated with this game.
It's just
near the end, I
torture.
genuinely had no idea where to go, so I just cheated to the next and also last level. The underground facility got blown up, I believe. Then we pass out due to the virus, presumably. You are then back in the hospital from the beginning. The plot twist being that the entire world was destroyed by the zombie virus. Again, reminding me of a similar game. The end is another cliffhanger. You hear people asking for survivors on an ambulance radio, but I'm not sure who really cares. And with the time since this game released being longer than that between the first and second game, I doubt we'll ever get a sequel. But if we do, they really need to work on improving the AI, combat, story, and the overall synergy of all the elements. Because this game was a slopfest like I've never seen it before. And it's not that this game is an asset flip, it may or may not be. But the assets themselves aren't the biggest issue. It's just that there is no soul in this game. It's like you ask an AI to program a sequel to Paranoia and it spat out this.
Oh my god, it does feel like it.
The first part is. To get a bit more analytical, I think most critiques of the sequel stem from the simple fact that they did not do sufficient playtesting. Valve, for example, is known for making some of the best single-player and co-op games experiences out there. They're also known for scrapping entire games and starting anew. Why is this? Because of playtesting. They do vigorous amounts of playtesting with all kinds of people, including just asking people on the street if they want to play the new game. Most importantly though, they don't interfere. They simply watch people play. And wherever they notice any amount of frustration, they will adjust. If you're making levels, you presumably want people to enjoy them. And the best way to do this is by getting other people's thoughts about them before you release. Or even better, before you even get to texturing your level. You yourself are often blind to the mistakes in your creations.
I mean, that is true.
You made it and know the ins and outs of every corner of your map. You know where the triggers for gas damage start. Players don't. You know the path to the next level. Players don't. And all this can easily be corrected. Underhell is perhaps the best counterexample to this. Not to say that it's perfect in guiding the player. I admit that I got lost sometimes too. But in general, you will always have a clear idea of where to go. And look, I don't want a path being drawn onto the floor with text hints around every corner. There are so many better ways to do it. Cleverly placed lighting that guides the player. Clear communication to the player about where to go. NPC companions that actually guide you. These are just some of the ways to get the player down the correct path in a natural way. Communicating to the player in a natural way is an art form that is hard to master. And the simplest way to master it is to watch people play your level and adjusting accordingly. Which is what I hope the team ends up doing if Paranoia 3 is to ever release. Because this game's universe continues to have an interesting premise, and at this point features a story to build off of. As much as I suffered while playing it, the sequel can have its charm, and it is free to play after all. But I really think your time is better spent playing other mods like Underhell or any of the other mods I talked about on my channel. The first part is a lot better if you ask me, and most
I like the fact that it's still free.
The sequel. Simple as that. I appreciate the effort put into it, and the intro was very promising, but the rest just wasn't my cup of tea at all. If you're a fan of horror action shooters, then maybe you'll have fun playing it, because there certainly are worse games. Not that I could name you any personally. Let me know what you think about both parts though. Shout out to X for recommending this mod, X being a person, not Twitter. Otherwise, thank you for watching.
X being a person, not Twitter.
I want to die.